In this lesson, you are going to learn how to animate using the layer transform properties, which is the most basic and essential ways to animate in After Effects. The most common and basic way to animate in After Effects is using the layer's transform properties. Mainly, you will be using the position property, scale property, rotation, and opacity. To view the transform properties, just select the layer, click the arrow to twirl open the layer, click the arrow next to transform. To pull up individual transform properties, just select the layer and use the keyboard shortcuts. A for anchor point, P for position, S for scale, R for rotation, T for opacity. To bring up additional transform properties, hold the Shift key, then tap on the properties keyboard shortcut. So Shift P for position, Shift S for scale, Shift R for rotation, Shift T for opacity. At any point, if you want to quickly show all of the transform properties, just collapse the layer and then reopen it, and then you will see all of the transform properties. Let's animate this character. I want it to end right where it is now, but I want it to start to the right and slide on. So I'll select the layer and tap P to reveal the position property. Now, since I want the character to end here, what I'm going to do is just drag the CTI, or the current time indicator, forward in time. Then I'm going to click on the stopwatch next to position. That's going to add a keyframe at the 2-second mark, and it's going to record the value of the position. Where this character is located is now on this keyframe. Then I'm going to drag the CTI back to the beginning. So now I'm going to put the character where I want it to start. And when I move the character, After Effects is going to automatically add the second keyframe. I'll click to select the character. I'm going to drag it to the right. I'm holding the Shift key to keep it in a straight line. And that little rubbery band line that you're seeing, that is the motion path. That is the direction of the animation. And when I let go, you'll see After Effects adds the second keyframe on the timeline. And to preview the animation, well, you can scrub using the CTI, or just bring it back to the beginning, tap the spacebar to preview. To adjust the speed of an animation, well, if you move the keyframes closer together, that will speed up the animation. And if you move the keyframes further apart, that slows down an animation. I'm going to move the second keyframe to the 1-second mark. I'll bring the CTI back, tap the spacebar, and I'm just checking the timing. Now let's animate the scale property. For that, we're going to use this logo layer. And before animating the scale or rotation property, you want to make sure you know where the anchor point is located. Remember, the anchor point is the reference point where it's going to scale or rotate from. So if you want it to scale up from the center like it's doing here, you want to make sure that the anchor point is at the center of the layer. To animate the scale property, I'm going to select the layer. The anchor point is where I want it, right in the center. I'll tap S for scale. I'm going to drag the CTI to where I want the animation to end. I want the logo to end at this size scale, so I'm going to click on the stopwatch next to scale. That's going to add a keyframe, and the value is set to 91% at this keyframe. I'm going to move the CTI back to the beginning of the timeline. Notice the character is moving because we've already animated the position property. Now I'm going to change the scale value to where I want it to start the animation. So I'm just going to click inside of one of the numbers. I'm going to tap 0. Because they're linked together, both values are going to change when I press the tab key or click off. Now you see they're both at 0. I cannot see the logo anymore because it's at 0 scale. But as I drag the CTI, you'll see it's getting bigger. And if I press the spacebar, we can preview the animation. And just like we did before, if you move the keyframes further apart, that's going to slow down the animation. If you move the keyframes closer together, that will speed up the animation. A must-know keyboard shortcut. Tap the letter U to show all properties that have keyframes. Tap the letter U again to hide them. Now let's animate the rotation property. For that, we're going to use this little banner. I'll select the banner, tap R for rotation. Remember, when animating the scale and rotation, you want to make sure that the anchor point is positioned where you want it to rotate around. I'm going to go to the Pan Behind tool. I can click on it in the toolbar or tap Y for the Pan Behind tool. I'm going to click on the anchor point and I'm just going to move it to the end. So I'm going to move the CTI down the timeline a little bit. This is where I want the banner to end. So I'm going to click on the stopwatch next to rotation property to add a keyframe at the 4-second mark, 0-degree rotation. I'll move the CTI to the beginning. I'm going to change the rotation. I can just scrub using my slider. I can also just enter a value. I can put in 90 degrees. So now it's going to be at a 90-degree angle. If I tap the spacebar, you see it's animating up very slowly. So we know now to speed things up, I can just select the second keyframe, move it in, bring the CTI back, tap the spacebar, and test out the speed. And the last transform property we'll animate is opacity. So I'll select the text layer, I'll tap T for opacity. So I'm going to click on the stopwatch next to the opacity property. That's going to add a keyframe wherever that CTI was located. I'm going to move the CTI to the beginning of the timeline. I'm going to change the value of opacity from 100 down to 0. I'll tap the spacebar to preview. To speed up the animation, I'm going to click the second keyframe and move it closer to the first. So everything is animating on at the same time. That's because all of the keyframes are in the exact same position. So to adjust the timing, you can adjust or offset the keyframes and just move them around the timeline. You could also move the entire layer, but I'm just going to move the keyframes. So I want the character to come on first, and then I'll have the banner pop up. So I'll click rotation for the banner, and I'm just going to offset these keyframes so the character will come first. As the character comes up, the banner starts animating on. I'll offset the logo a little bit, so I'll select scale to highlight the keyframes, and I'll just move the logo, character, banner, logo, and lastly, I'll have the text pop on. So I'll select opacity to highlight the keyframes, and I'll just move them down. Character, banner, logo, text pops on. Go back, spacebar. Cool. One thing I notice is when the CTI is at the beginning, we still see this banner, which is kind of distracting. So we can animate that on using position property. I'll select the banner, I'll tap P for position. I'm going to hold the shift key and tap R so I can see where the rotation comes on. So I'll click the stopwatch. This is where I want it to end. I'm just going to move the keyframe to where the rotation animation starts. And now I can move the position down. And rather than clicking, I can also just move the property. So I'll go to the second one, the Y. If it goes in the wrong direction, just go in the other direction. You can see the motion path, that little rubber band line. So this is going to animate up. So now I'm at the beginning. I don't see anything. Tap the spacebar. Perfect. And let's end on a pro tip. There are 2 simple things you can do to take your simple animations up to the next level. The first is to add easy ease. That's going to smooth out the motion. The second thing is to add motion blur to make the movement look more realistic, the way your eyes would see motion as something moved in. I'm going to select the layers, tap U to reveal the keyframes. I'll drag a selection over all the keyframes to add easy ease, to add a little smoothness. You can right-click, go to Keyframe Assistant, and choose Easy Ease, or this keyboard shortcut F9, commit that to memory as you are going to use F9 all the time. The diamond-shaped keyframes are linear keyframes. When you press F9, that adds Easy Ease, and they will convert into an hourglass shape. To add motion blur is a simple 2-step process. First, you need to click this icon to enable motion blur for any layer that has motion blur set. To set motion blur, all you have to do is just tick this box under the motion blur column. So you just tick, now motion blur is enabled for that layer. If you don't see motion blur, you're going to right-click columns and just make sure switches is checked. So just add motion blur for any layer that you want motion blur. Make sure this is highlighted. Now when I drag the CTI, notice the character. See that little blur? It's natural, it's subtle, has the movements going, but it makes a huge difference to your animation, as does the easy easing. Tap the spacebar. Looking good. A for anchor point, P for position, S for scale, R for rotation, T for opacity. Commit those to memory, but now you know about layer transform properties. You know most of what you need to know to animate in After Effects. And in the next lesson, it's all about text layers.